Welcome, everybody, to From Personal Data to Organizational Risk, how adversaries exploit personal identifiable information and how security leaders can fight back. We're here with Rachel Toback, CEO of Social Proof Security, Victor Wieserich, Senior Vice President of Offensive Security, GuidePoint Security, and our very own Glenn Sorensen, Cybersecurity Solutions Engineer from Delete Me. I'm going to kick it off to each of them to tell you what they do, and then we're going to hop right in. So, Rachel Toback, you first. Can you tell us a little bit about Social Proof Security?
Yes, of course. We are Social Proof Security. We help people avoid getting hacked with training, videos, and more. And I'm an ethical hacker, so our organization is led by ethical hackers for you to avoid getting hacked.
Thanks, Rachel. And Victor, you're up next.
I represent GuidePoint Security. We're a value-added cybersecurity reseller and professional services organization, pure play cybersecurity, and I lead offensive security for all of our clients nationwide.
Thank you, Victor. And Glenn, what do you do at Delete Me?
What do I do? Well, I cause trouble and lots of it. Well, what we do at Delete Me is remove personal identifiable information from data brokers out there. So think reduce human attack surface. So that's really what we do. For me, myself, I'm a recovering CISO, vCISO type, and have been doing this sort of thing on about 20 years, depending on how much misspent youth you count in that.
Phenomenal. All right, let's jump right in. Now, the first thing we're going to talk about is governance. I want to start with the big picture. NIST Cybersecurity Framework 2.0 now includes governance as a core function, signaling that cybersecurity isn't just technical, it's also an organizational problem set. I've been pushing for that for a long time, so I guess they finally listened to me. Does the governance category change the way cybersecurity leaders should think about personal data protection? That's what I want to think about. And specifically, I'm wondering if privacy and exposure risk reduction is beginning to migrate from checkbox compliance toward a more strategic approach to enterprise risk. And I'm gonna point this one at Glenn first, I think.
Okay. So the govern function in the NIST CSF now in version 2 flavors, I think is an important step toward getting organizations to move away from the idea of, it's just a technical control problem. It's a business resilience. It's a business, cyber risk management function. And it needs to be thought of at that level. It needs to be thought of as a business risk alongside any other. And as you're treating it that way, you're talking about risk management, risk reduction, and figuring out where your risks are. Well, and one of those risks is around the personal information that may be floating out there that could be used to attack your organization and the people in it. So I think it's a very important step in moving away from checkbox compliance. There's so many boxes to check, and every organization is unique and needs to be aware of its own risk in the context of its organization. And that's one of the things I think the govern function in this CSF does really well at this point. It makes you take into account the context of your organization and what risks are yours. So.
Victor, I'm curious to hear you talk about this too. I need different voices in my head on the difference between checkbox compliance and this move towards governance.
Well, yeah, we've all been in there, and my take on this is that this has obviously been an issue for a long time. It had to be in order for NIST to recognize it and to promote, this type of understanding and new inclusion, which is great. But that means we're already behind the 8 ball. So we already have some work to do, and this is promoting, that work up into the visibility of senior leaders to understand and prioritize how to make this all work. But that doesn't change the fact that there's still a lot of work to do. So I'm glad that we're acknowledging, that we have some problem here, some issue, and it's maturing the acknowledgement of where that problem and it should live and how it should be solved. And I love seeing all that, but the really the time will tell how we're able to action that and really make meaning and reduce that human risk by through these compliance efforts.
All right, but before we jump to the next one, Rachel, I'm not going to mana you, but I am going to ask you.
Yeah, go for it.
I can't help it. I'm going to ask you though, from your point of view, governance, how does that work from, specifically from your practice?
Yeah. I will say a lot of times when people are thinking about avoiding getting hacked, they start from a compliance perspective. So they start by thinking, what do I need to do so that I can meet the law where they're at, so that I can get cyber insurance? And we're definitely seeing people motivated by that. It doesn't make every organization make the right choices, right? But it definitely helps a lot of organizations think through critically, where do I need to put my dollars so that I can stay safe? And I do think we need to make sure that people understand that there are guidelines to protect us, even if compliance or checkboxes don't get us 100% of the way there. They at least start the conversation, and that's what we need.
Okay. Next up, culture eats strategy for breakfast. I've been saying this for a long time, but Peter Drucker said it first. In this case, personal data hygiene depends on culture as much as controls, right? So when it comes to personal data exposure, how does employee understanding of their own digital footprint affect the threat model? And Rachel, I just want you to keep talking. So
Sure,
you first.
Yeah. We know that when people understand their threat model or the likelihood of receiving these attacks, that they are more likely to change their behavior. And so if they understand when I post a picture on Instagram tagged to my company and it has my workstation in the background of that birthday photo, and if you go on Rocket Reach or Contact Out, you can find my email, my phone number, etc., then it makes it really easy for me to receive a phishing email, text message, or phone call. Then I will reduce my exposure, probably go private on my Instagram, maybe not post a picture of my workstation or my badge, right? So people, they don't like receiving a set of rules. They like to understand, how does this relate to me in my personal life and in my work life? And if you can make it personal for people, like, hey, those spam calls that you get, do you want less of them? Well, here are the steps to take to get less of them. It becomes real and it has true utility in their day-to-day life, as opposed to a set of checkboxes they feel like they must meet.
So how do you get, Rachel, just I'm going to follow up here. How do you get it to be something that people talk about and it becomes contagious within an organization? Sort of how do you get that to be an idea that's moving?
Yeah. I think you have to demonstrate the risk. That's why I do so many live hacking demonstrations, is I take people from OSINT, open source intelligence, all the way through to a deep fake or a voice clone style attack, or just like a simple phishing message. It really helps people understand, oh, that's why people always tell me that I shouldn't have my email address and my phone number on my LinkedIn contact info. And that's why it increases the likelihood of spam and fraud-based attacks towards me. And that's why they're telling me to use multi-factor authentication and avoid password reuse and take my information off online. They have to see it. People want the experience of seeing what the attack looks like start to finish. And the open source intelligence is just one part of that. They have to see the entire start to finish attack. They need to know basically the kill chain.
Exactly. Now, you're only as good as your most unguarded, overworked, eager to please moment when you get a note from the CEO saying, hey, send me the login for Salesforce. And off we go to the races. Victor, I am curious from a red team view, how does a strong security culture at an organization change the attacker's approach?
It's simultaneously the best and the worst. From the attacker's perspective, you don't want to see that, right? You want to identify people that are isolated, right? That aren't going to reach out for support, that aren't going to ask questions, that aren't going to be skeptical. And those folks are often the weakest point in the chain. And so when you have an organization who, like Rachel was saying, are made up of individuals that take privacy seriously, that understand the impacts of this data, and that all adds up to a culture or a team or an organization that builds trust, and everybody's looking out for each other, and you have individuals who have resources, who are open, who don't mind reaching out and saying, hey, this looks weird, can you take a look? Or, hey, this doesn't feel right, is this really you, or is this really something I should be expecting? That's a red teamer's worst nightmare. That's exactly what we don't want to have happen. And so when we have large campaigns that we're trying to pull off, or we're making repeat phone calls from a vishing or phishing perspective, it's that kind of openness and collaboration and willingness to support and help inside of an organization that kills those types of campaigns dead in their tracks. So it's great to see that. Like Rachel said, it starts with the individual because that's where people really get the passion and motivation to take change. But then when you get enough individuals and you get enough people talking and helping and everybody seeing how those attacks can happen and quite frankly are happening all the time, the more awareness that you have and again more support and relationship, that's the red teamer's worst nightmare.
Yeah, and I was going to say that when you mentioned when people communicate with each other and say, hey, does this look weird? That is honestly my worst nightmare too as a hacker. Like from an external perspective, not just an internal red team perspective, when people say, oh yeah, we have a Slack channel where we all go in and put in the latest emails or text messages or phone calls that we got and everybody's on there and always talking. I'm like, oh, great. So my job is going to stink. This is not going to be fun at all. Like that's how it is for me externally as well as an attacker. So I like hearing that internal perspective too, Victor.
So I follow up on this for, I would like to hear actually all three of you tell me how important the word no is in the vocabulary of an employee who may be trying to keep their company safe.
I can take a stab.
It's a nightmare for a red team person, isn't it?
Yeah. I would say most of the time, I actually don't train people to say no. I train people to use words that mean no, but feel softer. And the reason why is because people oftentimes feel really awkward when they're shutting somebody down. And so I'll often train the teams after I've attacked. Hey, if you said something like, absolutely, I can help you. I just have to verify identity using our protocol first. If you can read out that word that I sent to you over chat, email, or I just texted it to you, then I can go ahead and send that wire transfer. So
make it okay
it almost
and
like
acceptable to do that verification. So.
Right, that's exactly right, Glenn. Is it takes it from no to absolutely yes, almost like an improviser, right? Absolutely yes, and the way that I'm going to do it for you is by following our protocol.
Victor?
Yeah, and I'll say, from an advocate's perspective, it's having that kind of awareness that really makes the difference. So to Rachel's point, if you say no right away, then not only are you asking that individual to do something they might not be personally comfortable with, but you're almost aiding the attacker too, because you're letting them know that you're not a valuable target, that you're not worth their time, and that they should move on to another opportunity. So if you think about the big picture, you might actually be helping them move on more quickly. And so if you do like what Rachel said, maybe lead them on, maybe a little bit, don't do that intentionally. There are professionals out there, experts out there that do that for fun and profit on YouTube, which is always a great thing to go watch.
Shout out.
Absolutely. Amazing work. I'm not going to go so far as to recommend that everybody do that because it takes some skill and awareness and of course time, and it can be dubious at best to play those games with those adversaries. But in that sense, right, you are helping by making them unconfident, making them question, making them curious, maybe making them keep barking up the wrong tree. That can be somewhat of a defense in and of itself.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I just yesterday with the head of security at Delete Me had a fun back and forth where I said, permission to go down this rabbit hole. And because I'd received a weird approach, and he said, yeah, go for it. And we were sending each other yawning emojis throughout because they just weren't that skillful. But it was interesting to see how they were working their particular approach to getting in. Thank you for that response. Now, I want to start talking now about how people think about their exposure, their attack surface. When someone discovers their personal data online, home address, phone numbers, kids' information, it seems like an obvious question, but how do people, is there a typical, do you find that the folks you deal with think it matters? Do they understand, for example, that maybe they want to get their information offline, but they think it's one and done, right? And that it's not constant, it's not whack-a-mole, which is the truth, that your data is constantly finding its way back into the various ecosystems that feed fraud. So talk to me about that. How do we help people through these hurdles so they can remove their personal details from the internet and keep them off? Rachel?
Yeah, I would say the first hurdle is just having people know that their information is publicly available. Like one of the first things that I do with my training is I actually have everybody go to Google and type in their name and the words email address. or their name in the words phone number. You would be surprised, you'd be shocked at the vast number of individuals who have never actually done that. They might have Googled their name, but they didn't Google their name in the words email address to see if that would pop up on the data brokerage sites. So they just aren't aware that that information is being sold so much on the internet, and getting them to that point where they understand that is the first hurdle. Then helping them understand, why does that matter? Why does it matter that I can find your email address on Rocket Reach, Contact Out, Been Verified, and take it to a data breach repository and put it in and find 15 of your breach passwords? And why does that matter? Because you reuse your password. So I can log in as you into your LinkedIn now. And why does that matter? Because I can scam everybody in your circle. And now you have damaged your reputation for something that you didn't even realize was possible. So it's one of those things where you kind of have to show the chain to people. And it starts with showing them that their publicly available information is out there for them, their friends, their family, their children, and more.
Yeah, and just because my data isn't online, if my partner's is, I'm still pretty findable, aren't I? Glenn, can you talk a little bit about this?
Yeah. When I'm talking to folks about this, I typically see a couple of different reactions, and some of them are, shocked and dismayed. Some of them are dismissive. It's just a little bit of information. It doesn't really matter. But like you were talking about, Rachel, when you start showing them what the chain looks like, what the cascading effects can be and look like, then you start to get some attention and have some more conversation about, how do I start getting rid of this? How do I start removing this? How do I, remove some of this information? How do I stop leaking some of this information out there? What do I do about that? And then you can start having real conversations.
Okay, so everyone listening, if you have questions, we really want to answer them. So please drop them into the chat, and we are going to get to them in a bit. Before we move on, Victor, on the same topic, how do we best educate and empower employees to understand how their exposed personal data creates risk for the organization where they work?
Yeah, its impact. I think that's really the thing that I've seen open eyes the widest. And unfortunately, we probably all have folks in our orbit who have been impacted by some kind of fraud or scam. And if you're like me, those folks, when I hear those stories, when my friends and family come and tell me about their friends or their family who were impacted, it's like, oh my gosh, didn't even know this could happen. This is incredible. Like, this is crazy, right? Like, this is unheard of. And so it's just one of those things that people are just, so busy and rightly, don't think about these kinds of things. And they shouldn't have to, but unfortunately they do. And right now the best defense is their own personal awareness, understanding those impacts, and then not only removing what's already out there, but preventing more from leaking. And in today's day and age of these large language models and chatbots and social media and new technologies and paradigms that are being thrown at us, both from a work perspective and a personal one, it can be so hard to know where our data is going, because this new whiz bang technology is coming out promising all sorts of incredible life-improving technology, but the startup was just created yesterday, and who knows if they have a security team and where the data is going and private. But the world is moving so fast that the sprawl is real, and so we have to not only identify what's already out there and the impacts of what exists, but how to keep people from continuing to perpetuate their privacy failures and data all over the place.
Another thing I'll note. Oh, sorry, Bo.
No, Rachel, please. I was just going to say something silly, please.
I was going to say another thing that I always notice is when I tell everyday people that aren't in the security space, to go do this and look themselves up online, they're like, why is nobody talking about this? Like, I feel like nobody's talking about this. And it's so interesting because I feel like we are talking about it so much. Like, all of us are talking about it in our security bubble, yes. But it doesn't always make it to the everyday person. Your aunt, your sibling, their children, they need to understand it. And we have to get out there and we have to make it normal to be talked about around the dinner table. And I think hopefully maybe we're doing that today.
The larger culture conversation, I think.
Yes.
100%.
Yeah, instead of a corporate Slack channel with all the wall of shame of all the bad phishing, maybe it's a family text thread.
Right.
Well, also just, the awareness is key. just like Hamlet said, the readiness is all. But if you don't, speaking to a friend of mine who's a pretty well known actor just the other day, and said, "Do you know if your stuff is online because you've been in that house since 1982?" And he was like, "Oh yeah, I get requests for autographs all the time. They just send them to my house."
That's
I
scary.
said, "Well, how do you feel about that?" He has a gate. That's his answer. And we have to get people out of that mindset of like, the gate is online now. The gate has to be online, and it has to be in our behaviors. Speaking of gates, I want to talk about something that can get through a lot of gates. I was bored on a call yesterday, and I was playing with Sora, and I was like, I'd like to see myself playing with a bear and a Great Dane. And I made a nice video of me playing with a bear and a Great Dane. And then I have another video of me catching a Sasquatch on a rod and reel. So generative AI, isn't just a toy. It's changed the way attackers are looking at their prospects, their targets. Synthetic voice scams, deepfake executive requests, whether that's payment or for access to to SaaS, or having AI write pretexts. And if you don't know what a pretext is, I think Victor's about to tell you. Victor, talk about AI pretexting and how that's different from the way it used to be done, and in general, how AI is changing the playbook.
Yeah, it is. I mean, just speed and scale is really the shortcut to that story. So pretexting, or just general preparing for a campaign in social engineering, used to take a lot of manual rote work, right? A lot of research, a lot of what Rachel described, where earlier you're kind of chaining together different sources of information. You're taking things from data brokers to leak sites, and then taking those to an organizational context. There's a lot of steps, and there's certainly massive amounts of data to comb through when you're talking about password breaches, leaks, and all that data to comb through. It would take teams and researchers days, if not weeks, to come up with a relatively good campaign. The great thing about these large language models is that they live and breathe in text, and that's where all this data is. And they're purpose built to make sense out of huge amounts of unstructured textual data. So they're unfortunately the perfect tool to help make pretexting and preparing for these social engineering campaigns, so much better, so much faster. And so now not only are you bringing to the table that speed and scale, but you're also getting quite a number of other upgrades as well. So you're getting cultural context, where now you can just ask some of these models for how something should read in a certain geography or part of the world or country. You can even ask it to add little tidbits to make it more realistic with current events or weather data. Or one of my favorites is to work in sporting events and teams, and call outs to different unique characteristics of people that live in that town or working in that organization, that previously those threat actors who might be half a world away didn't need to know, or certainly had no reason to, or a very limited ability to learn. And now that's, again, just speed and scale, aiming these large language models, asking them questions, and baking them into these contexts in a matter of seconds instead of days or weeks.
Rachel,
Gone are some of the old indicators of
oh, Glenn, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
bad phishing. Those days are over. And I think we need to square with that a little bit and educate people appropriately. It's targeted to you at this point.
Yeah. Rachel, how should organizations prepare? I mean, we're talking about AI-powered social engineering, AI-powered pretexting. You are absolutely devastating on the social engineering front. You know a good pretext when you see one. Did AI improve your game and everyone else's?
Yeah. I mean, just like Victor said, AI hasn't changed what an attacker is interested in. AI just makes the attacker more capable faster. So it changes the scale, it changes the believability of the attack, whereas previously I would have to do 50 hours of research to determine everything that I need to know about my target, get all of their passwords, attempt to take over their device or gain access to their multi-factor authentication code, siphon it out, call help desk, pretending to be them, taking over their account. There's a lot of steps that go into social engineering, but now AI automates a lot of those actions. And so I can do calls, like I can pick up the phone and do a lot of calls. And a lot of my pen tests honestly still are that way. But I'm starting to get hired to do pen tests where the attackers, me, are AI agents, right? They're going out and programmatically pretending to be, say, Victor. This is just an example. I'm not actually doing this Victor, but I'm, using Victor's voice and calling 20 people at once because an AI agent can do that, but I can't. So the AI tool can be everywhere at once. I can only be one place. And so it's really about scale and increasing believability, because previously I'd have to pretend to be a vendor that you worked with because you don't know what the vendor sounds like on the phone, but you believe that I'm, really that person because I spoofed their phone number. Again, I'm spoofing because I'm using an app available on the App Store. That doesn't actually mean anything, but everyday people don't understand that. So now we have the spoofing capabilities coupled with the voice cloning, coupled with even popping into a live Zoom or Teams call, looking like that person, wearing their face like a digital mask. So it just increases the believability and really ups the ante for people needing to verify identity before taking sensitive actions.
And now let's do a follow-up here. What role how is personal identity? Wow. How is the information online right now that is personally identifiable information was the term I was looking for. How is that affecting the effectiveness? I'm just going to give up. How is it?
I think we hacked you, Bo. I'm pretty sure we hacked you.
What did you guys do to me? I used to be able to talk.
We hacked you.
So how is PII affecting the effectiveness? I'm just going to say it, of these attacks. It really is. It's amplifying it like crazy right now.
Yeah, it really is.
I'll add real quick just to say that what Rachel said about the AI being a force multiplier applies to PII as well. Many adversaries are still very opportunistic, right? They see the stars align in terms of the credentials that they have or the identities they're able to impersonate, and then the opportunity to apply those credentials or identities at an organization to get access. And that timing isn't always right, for where the adversary is paying attention, for when they care, and they could lose interest or move on before an opportunity arises. But now, with the advent of these agentic AI systems, I can create a bot that is purpose-built just for your organization or just for you as an individual and leave it running 24/7, 365, looking for any opportunity to take advantage, right? And that can mean monitoring data brokers, monitoring shady parts of the internet for new PII that could come out, and then within moments, identifying that, consuming that, and then weaponizing that to gain access. So again, we're at a speed and scale, and then this continuous monitoring kind of paradigm that we're walking into that's, I think, unprecedented.
Yeah. Okay. I'm going to try and get my words to work again for me. We're going to trundle along to another topic: chicken, meat, egg, risk models, and predictive defense. We're moving on to MITRE ATT&CK. It gives us a language for how attackers think and how they target. Can we actually predict future attacks, or is the act of risk modeling itself what keeps defenders sharp? How do frameworks like MITRE ATT&CK help teams stay ahead of PII-related threats? And can we use exposure intelligence to anticipate, not just respond to attacks? I'm going to actually start with Glenn here. Glenn?
So I think there are some areas of the attack framework that can help us see where we are and maybe analyze risk. I'm not so sure about the predictive capabilities. I think the innovation happens and then we react to it. I think there's maybe some more room for social engineering as a broader category to be included in the MITRE ATT&CK framework. It's often very technical and systems in nature, which is valuable. It's not to say anything bad about it, but I think there's maybe some more room to talk about the specific techniques that are in use, being used, growing in terms of social engineering.
Victor, MITRE ATT&CK and PII related exploits.
Yeah, I think it's a good framing, and I think what we ultimately want to do is educate defenders in that attacker mindset and have them just second guess the defenses that they're putting in place. my personal perspective is that attacking is way easier than defending. I only have to find the one little chink in the armor, so my job generally is easier than a defender's. But ultimately, defense has the upper hand because they know the organization, they have the context of what the organization does, how it works internally, and they know, finitely what they have to protect. The attacker has to think about everything, all the different angles, looking at all the different options, and I think a defender can get down the wrong path, trying to think too hard about the MITRE attack and trying to enumerate every little bit and bobble that could come out of that. But that doesn't change the fact that we need more defenders thinking like attackers, right? When they build something, they can't just expect it to be used the nominal way, the way that they expect. They have to think about all the, someone might go through the window instead of the door that I just made, or they might, walk upside down, all those different things. There's funny, regression testing jokes that I think go into that, but we just need more people thinking about what people shouldn't be doing as opposed to what they want them to do. And ultimately that will help folks reduce where the PII is going and how that's being used.
Okay, Rachel, I know you have a particular point of view on this. Talk about mapping attacker psychology. Does it give defenders an edge?
I have a little bit of a hot take here. So I think the MITRE attack framework is fantastic. And I think a lot of these frameworks that are built are really helpful for giving us shared language to think like an attacker. But when it comes down to brass tacks of actually defending against that attacker in the moment, I don't always think that it supports people, and it might potentially create and overcomplicate some of the ways that they need to respond. So I actually think a little bit differently in terms of the framework for defense, where you can start thinking like an attacker, but when it comes to, okay, what do I do about it? People need a list of like steps 1 through 10, right? And the MITRE attack framework does a really good job of explaining a lot of the ways that attackers think, but I think it struggles a little bit in the actionability of, and now I'm going to do A, B, C, D, and E, right? And I think sometimes people they'll reach out to me and say like, hey, I want to focus on this area of the MITRE attack framework, and they get too in the weeds with it, and they don't zoom out and realize this actually affects a lot of different areas of your work or your personal life.
Glenn, I'm sorry, you were saying?
There are just ways around. It's too easy to get down one particular rabbit hole and spend too much of your resources in one particular area when maybe agility is more called for and ability to react to things that change. I mean, attackers are innovative. That's the point. That's why we're here, and that's why we're in this kind of continual arms race. We have to be agile and respond quickly and effectively and limit impact. And that to me is more important than, diving deep into one particular area and, mitigating this risk completely or as completely as you can. So,
one of the things that occurred to me while we're sitting here about to head into another topic area is the question of, a lot of pen testing is focused on what you can accomplish on the phone or online, but some of it has to do with physical pen testing. And PII does actually have some bearing on physical pen testing, especially in this day and age of remote work. Who wants to go first and talk about that and how we should be thinking about that going forward at an organizational level? Victor, you're nodding.
Yeah. On-site is something that people it's the lowest priority in a lot of cases, especially for organizations that don't have a physical threat. I mean, there are many, that have to take physical security very seriously and don't have an option there. But, the average run-of-the-mill enterprise thinks of physical security, I think, last on their list because, it's hard to think through that someone would have not only that much intention, but that much motivation, to show up on site to do, what we all know has happened in the past where, sometimes it's easier just to grab a clipboard and a high-vis vest and, walk in through the front door claiming to be a contractor. And, that could be easier than a weeks-long, campaign with, tons of people and effort behind it. So that physical threat is one of concern. The PII that we're talking about helps to give validity to those interactions. And so whenever you're involved with an individual, there are so many cues that we look for when we're talking to someone to help, just reassure us what they're saying is true, right? The nodding, the smiling, the winking, the color of their face, right? And so you have PII to help give some context where you can drop some little breadcrumbs breadcrumbs or clues or little notes to help show that you should be there, that you have familiarity, that you understand and are confident, then that opens so many doors, literally, to be able to get access to some of the most sensitive information in a client context.
I'm seeing comments in the chat saying, you drop a USB flash. A famous one is plugging a Raspberry Pi somewhere in the system, somewhere near a system. There's a lot of ways in, but I'm also thinking, Rachel, about remote workers like head of security, and they haven't had their information scrubbed, so I can see where they live. If that computer's left open, I mean,
Right.
isn't that a lot easier than pretexting?
Yeah, I mean, so honestly, the thing that I get reached out to in regards to physical security right now is what's on top of mind for a lot of large firm CEOs. We're seeing a lot of physical violent threats against people who are in the public eye. After we've seen, some CEOs who are, shot in broad daylight in New York City, people are starting to say, wait a minute, my transportation, my house address, my physical address at work, where I am for a conference, I'm putting together the pieces that could be a physical security risk. And I think, unfortunately, we have to think about that in this day and age. And it's like a really hard topic for people to talk about, and they don't want to bring it up. But it is the truth that if you are a well-known individual and a CEO of a large company, then you do have to unfortunately think about your physical security. And that includes your address and where you're going and when. And I've had many conversations about taking down, PII from the internet based around that context alone in the last 12 months.
No, and it's an incredible, how to disappear is a problem set. And
Yeah.
It's not easy. It is doable. And it's an action worth taking for a lot of people. I'm also, reminded of the guy who was taken hostage for his crypto wallet in New York City earlier this year. If I ever have a big win on crypto, you're never going to know it. Well, you might
Exactly.
know it because I may all of a sudden just live on an island somewhere.
You won't be talking about
But yeah, you can come, Glenn. Well, everybody's invited.
Okay, good.
So let's move on. This is related. The insider threat, gas meets lighter. That can be a lot of things. It can be a social engineer, a hacker who compromises an employee, and it's to the point where that employee is willing to do whatever that hacker has suggested they do. It could take a lot of different tacks, all of them worthy of a movie. Compromised, coerced, a careless employee can actually be the cause of a problem on the inside. How can organizations integrate personal exposure data into their insider threat modeling? So early warning signs trigger prevention before, that explosion situation. Glenn, you hop in there first.
Yeah. I think the first thing is that organizations need to realize that the line between personal and work stuff is extremely blurry. And I mean, that's the place to start. Then when you have employees that have high exposure of PII out there, they're probably inherently going to be at a little bit higher risk, right? You start to couple that with some of the ways that this person can be coerced, compromised, otherwise tricked or bought into providing access or to providing data or whatever the case may be. That all factors in, and I don't know that we've done a very good job so far of thinking about that sort of risk that's out there, or at least how PII factors into it.
Rachel.
Yeah. One of the new pen test types that I've been asked to do the most this year is actually a bribery simulation, which sounds really scary. But we've seen this insider risk quadruple in the past year, where people are being bribed that work in IT, on the help desk, service desk. They're resetting credentials for attackers. We've seen this many times in the news in the past year. It's this isn't the first year that it's happened, but it's the first year where we're starting to see it really pick up in the news. And I've had multiple organizations reach out and say, can you simulate what a bribe would look like without actually completing the bribe? Because that's illegal. And I said, yeah, I can start those conversations, offer lucrative business opportunities to people who I can find publicly available because they list their place of employment. Or I can find that place of employment on RocketReach or another data brokerage site. So it brings that PII risk to a new level when these folks are getting reached out to on, say, a personal email address or on Discord or on their personal Instagram, because I found their personally identifiable information on a data brokerage site, found that they worked at X company I'm supposed to be hacking, and offered them a lucrative business opportunity offline. And that's what we're seeing attackers do in real life. This is not just me talking about this. It's like a real situation going down.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right. Well, first of all, Felicia King in the chats, you are killing it. And I want to talk to you at some point. But before we get there, Victor, I'm curious to know how you think monitoring exposure risk works in real life without crossing over into really problematic territory with employee privacy and like there's a very strong visible line that's where you can't mess with a person's privacy, and yet so what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, it's a social contract, and I don't think there's any right answer or any single right answer for any organization, because every team, every group, every enterprise is different, right? The amount of commitment it takes, the amount of involvement it takes, the amount of expectations, I'll say. So, it's ultimately going to come down to the social contract in that organization. And sometimes you get people who, hey, the mission is worth it. The I care, I'm here for it, and I want to dedicate myself. So I'm willing, to be a little bit more open or participatory in that kind of work and effort. And, that's certainly fine in those contexts. But I would say we need to figure out ways that allow that security, right? That validation. Maybe there's some type of process where an individual can go and do their cleanup work, and then that can be verified or validated somehow in a way that preserves privacy, where they can to give some kind of certification that says, hey, look, I've done the work, I've done the homework, I've cleaned up after myself as an individual, and so now I'm less of a risk to you as an employer, as an organization, without exposing what that actual data was, what that sensitive information was. And so, there's all sorts of interesting ideas that are out there that help cross that bridge between where personal privacy, begins and where enterprise privacy starts. So I think we're going to see a bunch of ebb and flow there, especially I think privacy is such an interesting topic when you think about it from a generational context. I don't know if you think about it, from your peers or my parents or some of the, younger generations that are running around now, but it's a marked difference between how different people at different age or maybe stage of life when they're early and young and their PII doesn't have much that can impact them. It's less of a concern, right? But then as you grow in your career and reputation and all that, and then it's more and more important. So I think privacy is going to be a very interesting area to watch. I mean, obviously in the short term, it's critical, but over the next few years, it's going to be really interesting to see how it evolves.
Yeah, no, I think I've seen people, the definition of a bottom, some people say, is you can no longer lower your standards as fast as your situation is deteriorating. And privacy has been deteriorating like in like crazy online for a long time, and it's not getting better, it's getting worse. Does that mean that you don't post photographs of your child? Because they have not yet said it's okay for their face to live online for the rest of their lives. They don't have the ability to say yes to that. I don't know the answer to that any more than anyone else does, but I do know this, that right now, the answer to a lot of the things we've been talking about is community, and a word that's related to community, which is communication. Right, Rachel? So like if you are being targeted and your company does use a Slack, it is, you can gamify these attacks by saying, I would much rather insult a boss and say, nice try, buddy, and find out it was a real request than hand over information. Glenn, what do you think about this, right where we are right now? Is things getting better or are things getting worse in the realm of privacy online?
I think things have kind of sunk to a level that there is actually rising awareness in it. And I mean, I think we're in the early stages of that still. But I think there is some hunger now, or some demand to understand and do something about that a little differently than amongst the average folks out there that don't live in this space and work in this space like we do. That maybe wasn't there even a year or two ago. So in that regard, I'm optimistic. That said, I mean, there's a lot of challenges. I mean, we have not lost our privacy. I mean, Rome wasn't built in a day, right? We haven't lost our privacy in a day, and we're not going to take it back in a day either. But we need to take those steps. And I think now the conversation is opened up to the point where we can talk about what those steps are.
All right, we're going to zoom way out, and because we got to get some questions in here from everybody who's been asking really good questions in the chat. And if you have any questions, throw them in there. Your layup here, your cybersecurity or PII layup. I will tell you mine. I actually have a personally identifiable information layup. I've been saying it for years, and before I said it, my colleague Adam Levin said it over at Cyber Scout, which is this: lie like a superhero. If you're signing up for something where it doesn't matter what your birthday is, if it doesn't matter what state you live in, don't say where you are, because all that information is just being used in ways that at the end of the day don't matter unless it's true. That's my layup. Lie like a superhero. Let's do a little quick round robin. And Rachel, what's your layup?
My layup is be politely paranoid. You got to make sure that your information is taken down online, verify that people are who they say they are, use long, random, and unique passwords for every account, and turn on MFA.
Love it. Victor?
Perfect. Mine isn't just to be concerned with the data that's already out there, but you should be concerned with stopping the flow now, today, especially with the onset of some of these chatbots and large language models, and really just the drivers behind the AI technologies today, where your personal context is the most valuable thing. And when people talk about context or prompt or any of that from a large language model perspective, really what they're talking about is your data, your information that only you know and only you can provide. And right now there's a lot of incentive to get that from you in any kind of way, right? Whether that's your chatbot therapy session, whether that's through your service desk chatbot, all these kinds of things. And so I think we're right at the precipice of a huge privacy explosion. And so people need to have a good head on their shoulders about where they're putting that context, especially in these AI systems, because it'll be really hard to put that back in the box once it's out.
Thanks, Victor. And Glenn?
I came over to delete me for a reason. I think that is one of the layups. The next one, though, is think about the rewards programs that you're using out there for various stores that you may do business at, and think about what you're giving up for that discount and why that discount may be given to you. Chances are they're making more money from the information that you're providing them than they're providing you in the discount, or they probably wouldn't do it. So polite skepticism, I like that. Use that when you're giving information out or thinking about giving information out, and think about the implications, and then maybe we can stop leaking some of the information that we have been voluntarily leaking in some maybe unconscious ways at this point.
All right, thanks. Melvin in the questions asked, is there any other way to disappear? There's actually a great book called Extreme Privacy: What It Takes to Disappear, by Michael Bazell. It's a thick book and it takes quite a bit of work here.
I have it right behind me.
Oh, yeah?
It's like right here.
sitting over
Yeah,
there.
see, we all have it. So if you wanna be with the cool kids, you gotta read it. So I'm gonna start with Sarah Myers, who asked, given the accelerated pace of AI and image development, how can we protect our personal image as a part of our PII from being used nefariously? And we'll start with Rachel.
Yeah. Anywhere that your face can be seen publicly available can be used in a deepfake. So there are two main tools that we use right now. We can either take, say, your profile picture on LinkedIn, for example, and then animate that as a deepfake if we can find your voice online with a voice clone. So animating a photo. And the second one that looks more real is we can find a video of you speaking online and get your voice clone to say something different out of your mouth movements. So it looks a lot more natural. So if you already have your voice and face out there, like I do, there's not a lot that you can do to prevent another person from using your likeness. I'm going to be totally honest with you. If you are a more private person than I am, I would start by making your social media private. I would remove, that video that you made at 17 from YouTube. Where that you can remove your face if you choose to remain more private online will make it harder for me or a real attacker to be able to deepfake you in the future. And if you have, a podcast that you made with a best friend when you were younger and you don't feel like that's relevant to your life anymore, I'd probably remove that from the internet, because then it's going to be really hard for me to voice clone you. So we can't prevent other people from deepfaking us. All we can do is train the people around us to verify identity, to spot when they are talking with our deepfake, right? And this is going to become really normal in the next 5 years. It feels really weird for me to say that right now, but give it some time and it will probably become more natural.
Everyone should have a safe word, and it should not be the street you grew up on. So anyone else want to take that, or should we move on to the next question?
I'll just add that the problem's only going to get worse, as Rachel said. And then when you talk to or add the fact that just going out and about today, you're bound to be in the background of someone's photo or someone's selfie or someone's YouTube stream that they're live streaming right now, or we haven't even talked about the surveillance that's happening, not only from an organizational or governmental perspective, and rightly so, but even just things like smart sunglasses that have cameras in them. And all sorts of little devices now that are recording video and voice all the time. And these things are tiny, and people are wearing them around to different events and parties. So if you think that you're safe because you don't have anything out there online, then it's only a matter of time, right? And I hate to sound so scary when you're saying those things, but like what Rachel says, it sounds really weird to say those things right now, but we should all be prepared for and expect a future in short order where we're just constantly being monitored and recorded.
You can kind of think about like the Coldplay concert example.
Yeah.
Like they, just in case you live under a rock and you don't know what I'm talking about, two people are having an affair at a company. They go to the Coldplay concert. They think no one's going to see them, and they show up on the Jumbotron, right? And now everybody's like, what? Those are people that are not married to each other at the Coldplay concert, hugging and doing whatever else. So we just kind of have to live under the assumption that when we are outside the home, there is a possibility that we are on camera, that people can hear and see us. And it's just kind of like updating your mental model. Another thing to think about is that we can reverse image search using AI tools for your face now. So we have these tools where we can take a picture of you, we can reverse image search and find you even when you were younger. If you really want to see this example in action, I just did it on the Scammer Payback podcast for the interviewer who does not go by his real name, and I was able to find his real name because of a picture from him when he was 8 years old. So the reverse image search can take your 28-year-old face and reverse image search you back to when you were 8 online. So kind of update your mental model to, how do I think about posting pictures publicly available? Do I want to do that privately or at all? It's just a way of kind of changing the way that you think about acting online now.
And educate your children.
I'm going to watch that. I would like to see Pierogi's face when he realizes that you were able to do that. Yes, I mean, just to, I'm going to chime in on this. PIMIs is real. There are other sites where you can do a reverse image search, and in the way that it correlates, and I really, it's almost Halloween, so let's just get scared for a second. Is somebody can take a picture of you at the supermarket because they like the way you look, or they don't like the way you look, or they like your t-shirt, or they hate your t-shirt, or your bumper sticker.
That is true. I mean,
So
it's a new way of thinking about how our behavior in public can be used to find our private address, why it matters to take that information down off the internet, why it matters to remove our phone number and our email address that's publicly available, because we can take your face with you shopping for tomatoes at the grocery store and figure out where you live. I mean, it's just horrifying. Jane asked, what's the name of the podcast? Scammer Payback.
no, it's called What the Hack. Anyway, that's the podcast I host, everybody. So let's see what the next question is. I believe it's from a very privacy conscious person named Jane Doe. Once we close our LinkedIn accounts and Facebook accounts, Meta accounts, are we still vulnerable to those companies? Good question. Glenn?
I mean, I have to say yes. The internet has a way of remembering. And even if you just think about it from the perspective of, do those companies actually know where all their data is and where your data may live in it? And can it be breached? Yeah, I mean, I think it helps, but we're not just safe from it.
Yeah, I think about it a little bit like going to the dentist, right? You went to the dentist once, that doesn't mean you never have to go again. So I think it's more important that we have to think about this as a process and get good at exercising the muscles of understanding where data and privacy impact us. Similar idea for organizations and vulnerability, right? 10 years ago, the focus was on just making the number of vulnerabilities go down, right? If I have a whole bunch of high or critical findings, I need that number to be lower the next time I test or the next time I look. And I think that was missing the point, right? The point was there's always going to be new vulnerabilities, just like there's always going to be new data or privacy concerns. And we as individuals just need to get good about understanding that, finding those impacts, removing them from the internet, or working with organizations like Delete Me to do that. And then getting, just in those reps of knowing that this is just what it's like to be alive right now in 2025 and beyond.
Okay, we don't have much time left, and I have an interesting question here from RM. Our teams operate by rules, but adversaries don't. How can we bridge this security empathy gap to teach our people how a threat actor uses our public PII, our online story, to build and execute a targeted attack? And in your opinion and experience, why isn't security leadership prioritizing this PII profiling risk over just docs physical threats? Really well put question, RM. Rachel, I see you nodding, so
Yeah.
take it.
I think the reason why companies don't prioritize this is because it's a huge, nebulous, scary, spiky problem. And when people have their public, profiles out there, that's in their personal life oftentimes. And so sometimes the company doesn't feel like they have the jurisdiction to say, hey, you got to take down your dog's Instagram with 40,000 followers that shows your face because you also have your business email, Gmail on there, and that could be used for XYZ, right? So they have trouble with knowing where the lines are. But I think many companies actually are starting to realize that understanding how much information is out there for each of their, say, admins is becoming a little bit more popular. So I've been working with a lot of my clients to maybe think, okay, maybe we can't think about the entire 10,000 people at the org, but let's pick the help desk and the people who have admin access at the company, and let's get them upgraded for MFA for a FIDO2 solution. Let's get them something like Delete Me to understand what their exposure is online, and then we can always roll it out to more people later. And I think that tiered approach is probably what will get you further at the organizational level.
All right, I know it's 2:00, so if you got to go. But I have to hear Victor. So Victor, what do you think?
Yeah, I just when you have let's see, I lost my train of thought. I just escaped my brain just for a second. Oh man, I'm having word.
I'm gonna give it to you again. How can we bridge this security empathy gap to teach our people how a threat actor uses our PII?
I appreciate that. The good news is that there's always been individuals that take advantage of the system. So it's not hard to explain to people that there are just folks that aren't going to do the right thing. The problem is the technical nature of what we're talking about is just hard for people to grasp. The good news is that it can be really straightforward, right? People are using information out there that you are spreading, unknowingly out in the world, and using it to impersonate you and doing all sorts of bad things. So if we can articulate that, then again, what we talked about at the start of this was building those communities back up together. The strength of us working together, the good guys, will always outweigh the lone individual who, the bad actor that's trying to, get in. We just need, again, spread that awareness and build those communities.
Okay. Now, thank you so much, Victor, Rachel, Glenn, for joining us at Delete Me today to talk about personal data and all the various issues we did. Thank you for joining us. And if you have any questions, you can get to us through joindeleteme.com.
Awesome. Thank you.
Are we off? Hi, everybody. We're still here.